biggest news of the day, President Obama announcing that there will be a new program for immigration, which is that they will stop deporting young kids who either have a college education or served in the military or had a high school education. Like, they're about to get a college education, they have the equivalent of a high school diploma or a GED. If they're above the age of 16, under the age of 30, they will not be deported. And by the way, unofficially, they've said if you're under the age of 16, we're not going to deport you anyway, right? So lots of interesting parts of this. You have to be in the country for at least 5 years, and there will be no limits on how many times the permit can be renewed. But here comes one of the hitches. You have to do it every 2 years. So some people are saying that this is a political move by President Obama to try to get Latinos to vote for him, to which I say, of course it's a political move. But that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. It could be a great thing and still be political. Now, the one element of that people aren't talking about is, oh, by the way, if you don't reelect me and you get a Republican, you might get deported. So how's that for an incentive? Now, they're not citizens anyway, and this is not a pathway to citizenship, as Janet Napolitano makes clear at the Department of Homeland Security. That can only be done through an act of Congress. This is the executive branch saying we will use our prosecutorial discretion to not deport these people and to, in fact, give them a permit for 2 years if they meet all these requirements. So I think it's a good move by the president. I would have liked it to come a little earlier, but it's here. I understand that it's political, but it's here, and it's better than nothing. So, thoughts, guys?
Well, you know, what people are going to say who are against this are going to say, well, this isn't fair to the people who come here legally. Mm-hmm. And that to be fair to them, we have to kick out, I guess, these kids who were brought here as children. And the other thing they'll say is, what about our unemployed? We have 27 million people unemployed, and they're here taking our jobs. So I think it's going to be a really easy issue to demagogue. On the right, and but I think it's going to be a winner because Rubio has his own DREAM Act that's kind of mirrors this a little bit, and so I think it was Barack Obama preempting Mitt Romney choosing Rubio as his vice president. That's what I think.
That's interesting. So let me address that in a couple of ways. Number one, of course, the Republicans are livid. Alan West, yet another example of executive branch overreach. Lindsey Graham, at best unwise, possibly illegal, and everybody's screaming their heads off about, oh my God, look at the president actually using his executive power. By the way, when he kills U.S. citizens abroad without a trial, that's totally fine. That's not abusing your executive power.
They don't say it.
Yeah, they love that. In fact, they're like, oh, he brags about it too much, right? But when you do it to actually help kids and save their lives in some ways, well, I can't believe he used executive power. Now, of course, you have to remember that President Obama is nowhere near as liberal as Ronald Reagan was on this issue. Ronald Reagan blanket amnesty to 3 million illegal immigrants, saying you get full citizenship, okay? So how do you like them apples? And Obama should give a speech, which he did. In that speech, though, he should have said, hey, you know what? I know this is nowhere near as liberal as Reagan, but hey, it's a good first step because the Republicans won't let me pass the DREAM Act through Congress. Now, when it goes to the issue of the economy, Jimmy, did you know that according to the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, okay, they said if they had passed the DREAM Act back in 2010, which is the fuller version of this, of course, it would increase federal revenues by $1.7 billion over 10 years. It would reduce the deficit by $2.2 billion. And that, in fact, DREAM-eligible students over the course of their life could have added $1.4 to $3.6 trillion to the economy. If we kick them out, we don't have that productivity in the country. Remember, these are kids that either served in the military or are going to get a college education. Right. So the most productive of all of them. And by the way, one other thing, if they become part of the legal workforce, they actually put pressure on wages to go up. If they're part of the illegal workforce, they put pressure on wages to go down, which is not what we want.
And you know, speaking to what Jimmy was saying about how this is going to be demagogued, it's more of the veiled racism from the Republicans in one of your points that you made, which is that we already have a jobs problem here. The assumption that these people, these young Americans between 16 and 30, and as Cenk said, it's going to be from 0 to 30, really, but 16 to 30, are only workers, and that they're not bright young Americans who are going to be entrepreneurs and start businesses and create jobs themselves is I think, blatantly racist, because you're looking at these people as just part of a workforce rather than part of creating jobs and starting business, because they don't, you know, I think it goes back to that race. And I want to talk about that, but the other side of it is the politics. You know, there's going to be, people are going to say it's bald politics. Well, the president is a politician. And sometimes we forget that. I mean, he is running for re-election. Everything he does is political.
Quick guessing game here, guys, because you know you mentioned the race issue and people, Latinos. There's this like stereotype, et cetera. So, science and engineering graduate students from Latino backgrounds. What percentage of the science and engineering students are from Latino backgrounds? Okay, because you know you get all the time. Oh my God, you know this is depressing wages because it's only.
Yeah.
Now remember, a lot of these kids are going to college. That's the whole point.
Right. That's the whole idea.
Right.
We're mining our resources here.
Right. Now, what percentage of the science and engineering kids are
You
Latino?
want to, all right, I'll guess. I'll say 17%.
That's
17%.
so funny. I was going to say 18%.
Really? Those are pretty high. Yeah, 31.5%. Okay, and I have to confess, I was surprised by how large that number is.
So is that
okay?
like almost, is that triple their population? I mean,
they're about 14, 15% of the
Double?
country at this
Okay.
point, a little more than double. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
You wouldn't have been, I mean, with that math.
No, not with that.
No wonder you're not in the 31.5%.
I wouldn't
Irish, a little lower. Anyway, so it adds to the economy in so many different ways and defies the racial stereotypes.